the same overarching parts of this experience are the same. And so the first one that we focus on is know yourself. And that is KNOW, know yourself. And why is it important to start there? Well, I always think about it like a roadmap. We can't get to where we're going if we don't know where we're starting from. And what I have found almost universally is that so many of us in this alcohol journey is we don't know ourselves very well. We've lost touch with who we are at the core. Welcome to the Sober Edge podcast, inspiration for alcohol-free living. I'm your host, Terry Patterson, functional nutritionist and This Naked Mind senior coach. The Sober Edge is a place to explore the infinite possibilities on the other side of drinking. In a culture soaked in booze, discover the wonder and joy of taking a different path. Meet real people living lives of purpose and passion. Learn the truth behind the alcohol myths and get ready to be motivated, inspired, and astounded by what is possible with the Sober Edge. Well, hey there, it's Terry, back with another edition of the Sober Edge podcast, and I'm excited today to connect with you in a solo episode because I have so much to share. And I'm really excited about all that I've been learning and the ways that I have been enhancing my experience. And I want to bring that to you in the podcast today. So today is going to be part one of a two-part series where I want to talk to you more about this idea of living alcohol-free. And so there's a couple of reasons that this is coming up. And one is that I recently completed 2 certifications, and some of what I've been learning really is so valuable and so critical to this journey of living alcohol-free. And if you're not exactly sure what I'm talking about with living alcohol-free, you can go back and listen to the episode where I talked about my 9 years looking back and then my 9 years looking forward of this journey of living alcohol-free. And what I mean is that I like to think of this journey as the first part is becoming alcohol-free. And then once alcohol's out of the way, we've changed the behavior. Everything else is really focused on living alcohol-free. And it's really interesting to explore what that looks like because I think there's a lot of common experiences that we have in this place. And there is so much as a coach that I want to share in the steps that I've learned to live alcohol-free. But if you start to think about, well, what happens after we stop drinking? Like what now, what next? There are so many options of what to focus on and where to put your time, attention, energy, and what's important for you might look slightly different than what's important for someone else. And so what I have done is I've created a program that's broken into 4 parts. And I actually love this idea of 4 parts. Someone told me about a year ago that I should expand it to a year-long program. And maybe at some point I will. But for now, the self-experience program is divided into 4 parts because those are the parts that I think really are the most critical to focus on as we learn to live alcohol-free. And some programs will be after alcohol and they might be a month or they might be 6 months or they might be a year or they might be a membership. I really wanted to put this together into a 4-month container so that you, if you are interested in having this experience with a small group of women, have this closed container that is hyper-focused on these 4 areas. And I love the idea of the beginning and the end. One of my favorite authors that you hear me talk about a lot, and I follow her podcast and her writings, is Gretchen Rubin. And she has a book called Better Than Before that talks about habits. And one of the things that she does in this book is she defines for us how we're wired, like why habit strategies work differently for different people. And one of the things she thinks about is some of us are starters and some of us are finishers. And so some of us get a lot of energy in starting a project, and some of us get a lot of energy in finishing a project. And so by having a closed container with these four parts, it really speaks to you whether you're a starter or a finisher. And this is the fifth time that I'm offering the self experience. And we are going to get started on November 19th. So if you're interested, there'll be more information. But whether you come into the self experience program or not, I wanted to share with you why I chose these four topics. And today I want to talk about where we start the first month, the first module, and then the second module. And when I was looking at this, I thought, well, what do I want to say? Like, what is it going to be called? And how am I going to set it up? And so I came upon this idea of of sober edge, live free. And that acronym is SELF. And so the self experience is a way that you get to learn more about yourself and do it in a small community so that you have that common connection that helps all of us grow and we see our own journey reflected in the eyes of others. And so that's why the self experience is an offer that is in a small group. And as I've mentioned, I've done this four other times. And so if you come into this fifth experience, you're going to benefit from all that I've learned along the way. But the same overarching parts of this experience are the same. And so the first one that we focus on is know yourself. And that is KNOW, know yourself. And why is it important to start there? Well, I always think about it like a roadmap. We can't get to where we're going if we don't know where we're starting from. And what I have found almost universally is that so many of us in this alcohol journey is we don't know ourselves very well. We've lost touch with who we are at the core. We're not really sure of our core values. We're not really certain how we're wired. We haven't ever actually maybe explored how we connect to other people and how that makes us uniquely us. And then also, we are sometimes distant from our own character traits. And so I'm working with a coach right now in another program who believes that we have to have this core in order to stand firm. And that's a place that we always come back to. So it's almost like having your mission statement or your principles. Like, what are the principles of you, your life, how you show up? What's the most important part for you? And what about you is unique? So we spend time in this first part of knowing ourselves. If you think about it, really understanding who we are. And that can be from a holistic standpoint. And I think it is important to be from that holistic standpoint. You know, where do I stand spiritually? Where do I stand emotionally? Like, am I an introvert, an extrovert? Am I an empath? Am I a highly sensitive person? And then where do I stand physically? Do I consider myself strong? Where is my practice of movement and somatic practices that help me with life? It's so powerful to understand more about ourselves. And one of the reasons that I feel so strongly about knowing ourselves better is because we often make ourselves wrong. And what I mean by that is we do that very human tendency of comparing ourselves. And when we compare ourselves to other people who are wired differently than us, maybe they are an introvert who's very intellectual, who's very spiritual, who's an empath, that would look very different than how I show up in the world. I'm more of an extrovert. I am not so much as an empath. And So sometimes we look at someone else and we think we're doing it wrong and we need to change. And so it's really so helpful and so beautiful to understand that the way we are wired and designed is good. It's good and it's uniquely you. And so when we get to know ourselves better and we understand, what our nature is, then we can show up and we can use all those beautiful parts without making any of it wrong. And we can double down on being uniquely us. And so if you think about your journey here as learning to live alcohol free, what do you know about yourself? And I invite you to do this uh, introspection and sort of explore. And when I work with women in the self experience program, we actually have some unique tools that we use where we understand, we learn more, and we start to pay attention to some of these assessments that will help us understand how we're wired. And we look at these character traits and we look very closely at our values and we ask, what do I stand for? What is driving me at this time? And there's that beautiful saying that says, if we don't stand for something, we'll fall for anything. And so we get an opportunity to know who we are on the inside. I don't know about you, but when I was drinking and over drinking, I was really lost. I lost that unique part of myself. I kind of knew a little bit about who I was and, how I like to show up. And I think I had a sense of what people thought of me, but I lost so much of that in those times of using alcohol to disconnect, to numb, to soothe, that when I started living alcohol free, I had to reassess, like, what are my values? What do I stand for? What is critical for me to know about myself so that I can show up and be strong and connected and become this vibrant individual who is living a powerful and beautiful life and a peaceful life. I didn't want to be at war with myself anymore. And so by getting to know myself, it was such a peaceful place to be. And to know where I stand on things allows me to show up in the right energy. And boy, is that a difference. So many women that I meet on this journey are caught in that chaotic, reactive energy. And by getting to know ourselves, we get to feel that inner peace. That inner knowing is so important. And so we start with the idea of know yourself. And we spend a month with, you know, uh, doing some activities, exercises, journaling. Uh, we have a guest speaker. We have all kinds of things that help us know yourself better and know more about yourself. And we start to build that foundation because once, like my friend David says, once we have that strong foundation, we know where we stand. And from there, we can continue to build out these other areas. So the second part is grow yourself. And for me, I love this because once we know ourselves, we can start to stretch in new ways. And we can start to grow beyond what our limited idea of ourself was. And so the growing part is so fun and exciting. And yes, we have to take risks to grow. We have to get out of our comfort zone. We have to get off the couch physically and metaphorically. We have to take some of those risks. And sometimes they're big risks and sometimes they're small risks. And that's how we grow. We get into action. And so, this beautiful part of living alcohol free is growing. I'm sure you have already begun to experience, even if you're just in the beginning of your alcohol free journey, I'm sure you have started to experience new growth. It's just like a plant. My husband is the gardener, so I hope I can do this metaphor justice. But I think of pruning and tending to a plant. And when we cut off the dead and the old and we prune back, the plant then has a chance to grow. And that first growth spurt can be a little tentative or wobbly. And as it grows, as the plant grows, it gets stronger. And of course, we need nutrients in order to grow. And in our alcohol free journey, if in learning to live alcohol free, our nutrients look like, not sunlight and water, although both of those things are important nutrients, but they look like compassion and self care and knowledge and wisdom and community and introspection and all kinds of tools and opportunities to grow. And I love putting this into play and watching how it unfolds. So imagine a small group of women who have gotten to know themselves better and they're now ready to stretch the wings that they see that they have. They realize their potential. They're starting to embrace this beautiful change. And now the opportunity is to grow. And risks might look like growing in a relationship. It might look like opening up new ways to communicate with your children or a loved one or a partner. It might look like growing because we are stretching our knowledge and we're out there seeking new information and we are reading books and listening to Quitlet and listening to podcasts and engaging in the knowledge of living a whole life. And so growing is the second part that I see as this beautiful experience of living alcohol free. When we're in the early stages of just becoming alcohol free, I really feel like, yes, we do know ourselves a bit, but we're still untangling the past from the present and we're building on this beautiful future. And so this opportunity to know and then to grow takes intention. I think it can happen very organically. However, if we do start to know ourselves better and we think about growing, if we build in intention and we get support, wow, that really can make a huge difference because this journey of living alcohol free is tender, kind of like that plant growing. It's tender, and we don't know yet all of the things that we're going to face. And so, having a place where you start by just getting to know yourself, it's kind of like any relationship. Before we can make a decision if we want to grow with a new person, if we want to grow a friendship or a love relationship, or we want to grow in our connection with a work colleague, first we have to get to know them. And so this is how we get to do it with ourselves. We get to start building that relationship with ourselves. And from that place, we can start to grow. What does my beautiful self, my beautiful alcohol free self, what do they love to do? How do they like to show up in the world? What do they want to give back in the world? What is their biggest passion, dreams, desires? And so these two places, I invite you to explore what it looks like to know yourself more and then to grow yourself more. And if you want to do that in community, I invite you to check out the Self Experience program. As I mentioned, I think I mentioned we're going to open the doors November 19th, but it's available to sign up now. It's a 4-month container. And again, we're going to do 4 parts together. The first part that we're going to start on in the middle of November is that beautiful part of knowing yourself. And then next week, I want to share with you the other 2 parts beyond knowing and growing. There's 2 more parts that I think are the next evolution of you in this beautiful journey of living alcohol free. All right. Well, I look forward to finishing up with part 2 next week. Have a beautiful week. Thank you for listening. And I hope you will enjoy knowing and growing this week. I want to thank you for tuning in to the Sober Edge podcast. This is a place for important conversations and a safe place to question everything you thought you knew about drinking. If you're looking for your sober edge, I want to invite you to connect with me at thesobernutritionist.com, where you can grab my free resource, Becoming More, a guide to loving your sober life. And I would be so grateful if you enjoyed this podcast, if you would leave a rating and review, as it will help more people find their sober edge.